Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special post-event, the Chalice Events Love in the Kitchen Conference. I hope you all had the opportunity to join us during Chalice's Corpus Christi weekend. But if not, we've opened our content so the greatest number of people can discover their own personal recipe for holiness. In addition to rebroadcasts of cooking sessions led by cooking priests, Father Sammy Mileta and Father Leopata Linghug, we've also had fascinating sessions from Rita Heichenfeld, who spoke about biblical foods, and spiritual healing from eating disorders presented by Maura Presler. And she reaffirmed that food is definitely not the enemy. On top of that, we have video reflections on over 30 different faith and food topics, ranging from wine to tomatoes. So please head back to chaliceevents.org after this session, rewatch the broadcast, discover your personal recipe for holiness, and share it with friends. So in celebration of the blessing that Love in the Kitchen has been to so many of you, Chalice is now honored to welcome Amie Bourdua to discuss restorative eating. Ms. Bourdua has a master's degree in human nutrition and functional medicine and has practiced as a registered dietitian for over 15 years. Her evidence-based whole body approach to nutritional decisions reaffirms her deep faith and strengthens her belief that God doesn't create anything subpar. Indeed, all that God creates is good. So on behalf of Chalice, it's my sincere honor to introduce you to Amie Bourdua. Amie, welcome to Love in the Kitchen. Oh, you're muted, Amie. You're muted.
Thank you, Theodoric. I'm happy to be here.
So it's our honor. So before we start, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage all those people who are watching along to post any questions in the speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. So just hit that little speech bubble button and a little window will pop up. If you put a question in there, then I'll see it. And if we have an opportunity, which I'm sure we will, I'll pass that question on to Amie so that she can answer it for us. So, all right, Amie, please tell us a little bit more about your nutritional approach and the evidence that led you to adopt it.
Sure, I would be happy to. So I'm just going to start with my personal story. So when I had graduated from college with my bachelor's degree in dietetics, I had gained the typical freshman 15. And so I wanted to try to lose this 15 pounds. So I'm going to take what I learned in my dietetics program and I was going to apply it to myself. And I did. I used myself as a little test subject, a little guinea pig. And so I did the typical thing where I reduced my calories and I increased my exercise. So I was exercising 3 times to 4 times a week, sometimes for 2 hours at a time. And then I was decreasing my calories. I had figured out through myfitnesspal.com, figured out about how many calories I needed. And I decreased my calories daily by 500 calories. So that typically tends to be the recommendation. And because 500 calories over the course of 7 weeks is a whole pound. So anyway, I did this for 9 months straight, and I lost roughly about 10 pounds. So if you think about it, I should have probably lost roughly about 36 pounds, but that didn't happen. So this model of calories in equals calories out didn't quite work for me the way that I had anticipated it to work. And I'm sure that other people have experienced that for themselves as well. So the question is why? And I think sometimes we tend to blame ourselves instead. Like I didn't do something right. I didn't count my calories correctly. I must have forgotten to log something. And so we tend to blame ourselves because of course this calories in equals calories out, it has to work, right? It's scientific. So anyway, after I had just lost the 10 pounds over 9 months, I had kind of let that go to the wayside. I gained the 10 pounds I had lost right back. And then I had gone through my master's program in functional medicine. I had learned about something called the elimination diet. Well, after my program, I tried to get a job in functional medicine. And one of the requirements was that I had to know what an elimination diet was, and I had to be able to walk a group of people through the elimination diet. Well, I had not done that for myself before, and so I did not get that job. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm going to make sure I know this elimination diet inside out. So again, I used myself as a guinea pig. So starting right at the same weight that I was the very first time I tried to lose that freshman 15 again, I put myself on an elimination diet. So just to explain what an elimination diet is, it is it's a diet where there's 3 phases. The very first phase is where you eat really soft foods. It's very gentle on the stomach. It's very calming for the stomach. It's all anti-inflammatory. It's specifically to figure out what your food sensitivities are, what your food allergies are, or any kind of intolerances that you might have. And so that's kind of the goal of this particular diet. So the first phase is a very soft phase. The second phase is where you're for 2 weeks just eating very anti-inflammatory foods. It has a bit of a structure there. All the foods are going to be grass-fed meats. They're going to be organic, and there's going to be as little preservatives or pesticides, herbicides, that kind of a thing as possible. So anyway, I took on this diet, and within just and also I did not decrease my calories, because really at the time my goal was to learn the diet, not necessarily to lose weight. So I didn't decrease my calories, and I had actually, because I had been super busy, I had actually decreased the amount that I was exercising. So instead of exercising for 2 hours, I was exercising for 1 hour. And instead of 3 times a week, I was exercising twice a week. So usually you would think that by not decreasing your calories, by kind of eating a normal amount of calories that you typically do, and by decreasing your exercise, you would end up not losing any weight. But by the end of just 2 months, I had lost 14 pounds. So I was almost at my 15-pound mark. And so, I had to stop and ask myself, what is the magic of this diet, this elimination diet? Okay, so why does something like the elimination diet work, but the calories in versus calories out didn't really work for me? And when it really boils down to what makes somebody lose weight, or what makes somebody heal, or what makes somebody restore, it really comes down to one word, and that word is stress. So I'm going to get into the topic of stress in 1 minute, but I first wanted to kind of explain a little bit more why the CECO model didn't work for me. So we kind of have this trust in science that we can apply this type of science to ourselves immediately and have some kind of calculated result come out. And that isn't necessarily how our bodies work. Our bodies are very complicated, but very synergistic. It's the way that God created our bodies, to work in a way that's very synergistic, that heals and restores itself. The body is really good at healing itself. Anyway, so one analogy I like to use is, if you were to walk the whole entire, if you were to walk around the world, it is roughly about 25,000 miles. So the average person walks 2,000 steps a mile. And so if you were to walk around the earth, it would take 50,000 steps. 50 million steps. So in our mind, we think, okay, 50 million steps, I can imagine doing that. But what we don't take into consideration is that you have to go around oceans, you have to climb mountains. There's just going to be terrain that's going to be difficult, right? So there's all kinds of extra steps you'll probably be taking. It's not going to be some straight line. And so if you think about it that way, the calculation makes sense. 50 million steps, great. But in reality, it just doesn't work that way. And it's the same with our bodies and the CECO model, the calories in equals calories out. It just doesn't work that way. In reality and calculation, yes. So when you really think about it, the reason why that doesn't work so well in reality is because of this word stress. If we think of our life as this giant cup and our stress cup, and we are throughout our life, there's different kind of stressors that we fill this cup up with. When I say stress, I don't necessarily mean emotional stress only. I'm also talking about physical stress. So are some people exercising too little? Are they exercising too much? That's a physical stressor. Do they have a pain in their hip or in their back that's causing them to walk funny? So if they attempted to do their 10,000 steps a day, well, they just did 10,000 steps wrong, right? Because that just that caused extra stress on their joints that shouldn't have been there. So that's physical. And then we've got environmental stressors. We have chemicals we work with every day. If you're a hairdresser, if you're in carpentry, there's all kinds of chemicals people are using all day. Even a housewife is at home using things to clean her house. And, when we're smelling that, we're taking in all of that. Sometimes we have allergies to certain kind of sheets or pillows or dogs, animals. So there's the environmental, and then we have the nutritional, right? So we've got foods that we're eating that just in general aren't very good for us, that are causing inflammation naturally, like refined sugar. For some people, most people, gluten, dairy, and, foods that are very typically inflammatory for a handful of people. And then we've got people who aren't eating enough or people who are eating too much. All of those are going to cause nutritional stressors on the body. So, and then on top of that, we've got the mental and emotional stressors as well. So you can kind of see that in every category, the stress bucket starts to add up. And so when that stress bucket gets to the top and it starts to overflow, that's kind of where the body gets into this fight or flight mode, where it doesn't always want to let go. The hormones are set up in a way where it doesn't want to let go of that fat. And so now you already have a stress cup that's overflowing, and now you're going to decrease calories and you're going to increase your exercise, which is just going to add even more stress to your body. So, when you really think about it, your body has one job, and your mind, your brain, it has one job, and that job is to keep you alive. So if it can keep you alive in this fight or flight in the moment, it's going to choose that. It's not going to choose to keep you alive 10 years from now, because it doesn't understand 10 years from now. It only understands what is happening in your body right now. So it's going to make the immediate decisions to do what it needs to do to keep you afloat now. And the body is very smart that it can figure this stuff out. So when we are under a lot of stress, that's how the body takes care of it, by certain hormones and whatnot that it thinks is keeping you safe, by keeping that fat. So anyway, that is kind of a little bit of a touch on the whole stress model, where once you figure out what your stressors are, you can start to unpack how to really rejuvenate and heal your body. So for me, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but my stressor was my nutrition. So I was actually eating a lot of foods that I was sensitive to, and that I was, I'm mostly sensitive to. I don't really have any food allergies. So anyway, when I was doing the elimination diet, I found food sensitivities I didn't even know I had, and symptoms that I had on a regular everyday basis that I just thought were normal. So being fatigued all the time, having bloating in my gut, my stomach being upset often. Some people will have eczema. Some people will have all kinds of additional side effects to food sensitivities, and even to the degree of causing autoimmune diseases. So a lot of Hashimoto's, hyperthyroidism has to do with food sensitivities. Autoimmune diseases in general tend to have to do with food sensitivities, and the list goes on. So that is how I really got into the elimination diet, and why it's a huge area that I promote, because I have seen so many people benefit from this diet, and their body that wants to heal itself, it is easily restored by just removing that nutritional stressor from their system. So, and I think that naturally, we all kind of have an inclination where we do understand how our body works. Theodoric, I don't know if you're there. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind. Okay, so if you had 100-calorie piece of meat versus 100-calorie piece of cake, which one do you think, if you were to remove from your diet, would help you to lose weight faster?
I'm guessing the cake. I hope so. I hope so. Or my workouts are being wasted.
So in this example, the natural inclination for people to pick the cake is very common. I don't think I've ever had somebody pick the meat. So you can see that naturally we know that even though both are 100 calories, we kind of know the cake is worse, you know. So, you know, the idea of the calories in equals calories out is a nice process. It's a nice calculation that's kind of fun to have on you, but it's not going to be the key to weight loss, and it's not going to be the key to really healing and rejuvenating the body.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, Amy, because we would never choose the cake like post-workout unless we needed to restore our glycogens or something very, very specific. So is it just a very intuitive sense that God gave us as to what foods are good and which foods are not? Do we just all naturally have that sense, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think that we are quite removed from what is natural and healthy. And so it does take a little bit of research nowadays to really understand how your body ticks. But I do think that it is something that is innate once you really start to get into it and start to think about it. When I have my clients go on this elimination diet, they're able to feel the difference, you know, and after a while, they start to crave the healthy food instead of craving the sugary foods or the foods that are inflammatory. And of course, I always have people who kind of break the diet, and it is a hard diet. It's not easy, but it is something that's worthwhile. And so I do have clients that will break the diet here and there, and then they'll tell me about it later on. And I'll say, okay, hey, I get it. You know, life is hard, and sometimes you just need that piece of cake. And then I'll say, so how do you feel? And they'll say, oh, my stomach really hurts. So anyway. Yeah, so I do think that over time you do learn this sense of what works with your body, what doesn't work with your body, and it does become an instinct. You just have to start somewhere.
Thank you for that, Amie. One of the questions from our audience is, have you ever had someone improve adult acne through the use of the elimination diet?
Okay, right. And so is the adult acne psoriasis? Because psoriasis can be an autoimmune disease. So yes, I have had, through the elimination diet, I have had people improve their skin and their acne or any kind of bumps and rashes through the elimination diet. Yes. Now I can't guarantee that that's the cause. Of course, you have to, if the elimination diet didn't do it, then it was an alternate cause. It could be a pillow somebody's sleeping on, or, an allergy to the feathers inside, or, it might not be food related, but yes, I've had a lot of people have their skin clear up through finding out what foods they're sensitive to.
Very interesting. I've got a follow-up with regard to calorie increases versus calorie reductions. And it makes sense that if you have a caloric deficit, how your body's not getting what it needs. But where does fasting fit into this? Especially, given its prominence now in our culture and it's being endorsed by so many people, because that's the opposite. You're really reducing. Does it work?
Right. Okay. That's a really great question, and it can be so confusing. So I do really love the idea of fasting. I think that it has so many benefits to it, not just physical benefits, but spiritual benefits as well. And so I definitely promote a certain level of fasting as long as they're medically capable of it. So the problem with the calories in equals calories out versus fasting is that with calories in, they'll just call it CICO. The problem with CICO is that it's a consistent everyday thing. When your body gets a consistent amount of low calories every single day, it adjusts to that. Your metabolism adjusts to that. Your body is very smart. It's going to keep you alive. So what it's going to do is it's going to steal calories from something else. I actually had a client who was roughly about 400 pounds, and she had decreased her calories so much. She was very meticulous too about keeping track of everything. And she had this beautiful map of her foods, and she was very meticulous. So I knew everything she was eating, and when she would cheat, which she never cheated, but she was only eating 900 calories a day, and she wasn't losing a pound. So when you have somebody who has been for a long period of time decreasing their calories so much over the course of a long period of time, that's going to lower their metabolism instead of help them to lose weight. So that's why I don't recommend the calories in equals calories out. My recommendation for this woman was to actually increase her calories. And after I tried to explain to her why, I never saw this woman again. It's a very scary thing when you are obese and thinking of eating more food when eating less food is thinking of eating more food is a very scary thing when you're only eating 900 calories and you're not losing any weight. It's very scary, but that's only because we're stuck in this mentality of calories in equals calories out, not the stress model, right? This particular woman, her metabolism was so low that her body was just under a certain amount of stress that it was unable to recover from because it did not have the calories it needed and the nutrition that it needed to really heal itself.
So how would you know that, Amie? Obviously you might know because you're a professional, but if you're kind of trying your best to eat a balanced, healthy diet, you're exercising, but you're struggling, you're either not putting on the muscle or you're still gaining fat, how would you know whether it's stress or food or the combination? Any helpful hints?
Okay, so I knew what was stress and what was food because in my practice, we did food sensitivity tests, and I did walk people through the elimination diet. And I also had something called a DEXA, which is like a bone scan. Like you go to the doctor, you get a bone scan. And so I was able to see the fat percent, muscle percent, bone, and water and all that kind of stuff in the body, in my client's body. So I was able to see if my recommendations worked for them or didn't work for them. And so, you know, I could tell if removing the food was helpful. And also the DEXA gave the metabolic rate that person's body was at. So I could see what her metabolism was burning every day. So because not everybody has a DEXA at their doctor's office, we don't have them at the gym, to be able to tell if it's stress or if it's nutrition, unfortunately, my answer is going to be, you have to kind of use yourself as a guinea pig, kind of like what I did. You know, go through an elimination diet and see how it goes, trial and error. Unless if you're working with a professional who is able to kind of put together the pieces of your life to see which areas are stress and which areas aren't, and which areas aren't as big of a deal. So I have one particular client. He is top notch, and he just follows all of my recommendations to a T. But with him, I've come to a rock and a hard place because he is following my nutritional advice, but his issue with weight is not nutritional. It's actually that he has scoliosis, and he cannot sleep at night very well. And so he's waking up and he's barely getting 4 hours of sleep every night. So instead of a nutritional recommendation, I was asking him to go see a sleep, you know, therapist or some kind of, to get a sleep study, or to go to a chiropractor, to go to, you know, that's not my area. But sometimes it's not nutritional. So it's really looking at your whole entire life and figuring out which area of stress is causing me the most amount of I guess stress on my body. And sometimes a professional is better to walk you through that than you know, trying to do it on your own. But you can always start with nutrition. You can always start with something like an elimination diet. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was laughing to myself. So I was thinking how a good solution for people who are complaining about their weight is say, you need to go to mass more, remove the stress, go to church. We have a question from Lahia, Amy. So she's wondering about intermittent fasting as well. And she's wondering if there's one of the models which you'd recommend over the others. Okay. Maybe speak about the different models and when they might be applicable.
Yes, and I would love to be able to answer her question. It's just complicated because every person is going to be different. There's going to be some women, it was a woman that asked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So women, unfortunately, your bodies are very different from men's. And when it comes to intermittent fasting, you have to be a little more careful than men do. You know, God created men with toughness physically. And so they just can handle a lot more stress physically than a woman can. And a woman who is, especially a young woman who continues to have her periods, will experience a lot more stress on her body than other people. So, you know, I have to say it varies, my answer, because I don't know anything about this particular woman that asked. I don't know if she's postmenopausal, menopausal, perimenopausal, or if she's still getting her periods. And so I really can't answer that particular question. I'm sorry.
And I'm not even going to go down there. So for men, what would you recommend for men with regard to intermittent fasting?
Yes, I think most men can just go for it. Most men can pick any kind of intermittent fasting and go for it. Now, if they have medical issues like diabetes, or especially type 1 diabetes, they definitely should talk to their doctor. My recommendations are not a doctor's recommendation. You know, nothing I say trumps that. But for the most part, when it comes to men, a lot of times if they just do intermittent fasting, it tends to really work for them, and it almost doesn't even matter which one they pick.
Good to know. Good to know. Amie, I have heard a rumor that you appreciate bacon. So,
Bacon?
but I would think about bacon as being like the cake, something you wouldn't want to have in your diet. But I've heard you enjoy it. So, what are some of the foods that we think are bad or have been misled to think are bad that actually aren't as bad, or vice versa?
Sure. Okay, I'll get to bacon later. Um, number one, I would probably say eggs. Eggs are very underrated. Eggs are probably, this is just my opinion, one of the most perfect foods. Eggs have a little bit of carbs, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat, and there's like this beautiful combination. So eggs would be one. And the reason why people started to avoid eggs was because they were afraid of the cholesterol. And in 2015, in the, oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember the name of this now. It's, well, anyway, it's a journal that for Americans where they basically tell you what is healthy, what is not healthy, and it's what the medical field goes by. Anyway, they had recommended in 2015 that prior to 2015, the recommendation was 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day. Whereas in the 2015, it literally says cholesterol is no longer a nutrient of concern. So we went through this whole period of hating eggs because of the cholesterol, yet now we're finding that cholesterol is not necessarily the issue. Cholesterol is kind of like, if you think about it, the phrase I like to use is found at the scene of the crime, but found not guilty. So cholesterol is kind of like this little patch that gets placed over torn arteries, like the little Band-Aid, and the body's trying to fix you. The body's always trying to fix you and heal you and regenerate you. And so it uses cholesterol to do that. Anyway, so what we're finding is that with eggs, you can eat cholesterol, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's causing you to have heart disease, because whether, people like it or not, the cholesterol is going to be made in order to fix those arteries anyway. Anyway, that, to continue on with your question, eggs would be one of them, huge. And what else? And bacon. So bacon, I do eat bacon. I have a couple of food sensitivities. Mine are milk and gluten. And so when you eliminate gluten, you eliminate a lot of areas, a lot of categories of food. So I do eat bacon, but I would recommend, when it comes to meat, to eating organic meat and to eating grass-fed meat as well. If it's a chicken, pasture raised. Sometimes when I say pasture raised, people think I'm saying pasteurized. I'm not saying pasteurized, pasture raised chickens. But bacon, I do eat. And I'm not going to say that it's bad or good for you, but the healthiest that you can get, the better. But yeah.
Could you maybe comment on, so I agree with you. I always say eggs are like God's perfect food. It has like everything you need, tasty, versatile. You can use it like in anything, baking and breakfast, right? But what about alcohol? So that's one of God's other wonderful creations. Where does that fit into this?
Sure. So alcohol is actually always inflammatory. But the difference is some people can handle alcohol a lot better than other people can. So there are going to be benefits to alcohol, because we're not just talking about one thing, which is the alcohol. We're talking about like wine, right? Wine has phenols and all kinds of extra little goodies in it that, have been tested to help with heart disease and, all these other things. So there's a lot that goes into food. It's not just, is this a good food or is this a bad food? It's going to be very personalized, which is why I recommend the elimination diet, because then you can figure out what your body tolerates best. And alcohol is actually on my list also of I don't tolerate it very well. After the second drink, my stomach starts to get upset. So I can get away with one drink, I can't get away with two. And so that just gives you an example that it's not really about bad food versus good food. It's about what works with your body.
I'm all about the wine, but I don't do well with alcohol. I almost never drink it. Are there any last words, little tidbits of wisdom you'd like to pass on to inspire people, maybe with regard to the elimination diet?
Sure. So I really believe that God made the body amazing and beautiful, and it was made to heal itself and to rejuvenate itself. All we have to do is give it the right material and feed it what it needs to do just that. So, with the idea of the stress model, figuring out what are your major stressors and removing those stressors first and foremost. And then usually one of those major stresses is going to be nutritional. So checking out the elimination diet would be a fantastic idea. It hurts no one.
I think that's wise, and that's really going to impact people just to think about their foods and their lifestyle and kind of look at the two as a package as opposed to them being compartmentalized. So thank you so much for joining us today, Amie. So I want to extend a warm welcome and a thank you to everyone who joined Amie and me today for this session. When we sign off in a few moments, please be sure to check out the Love in the Kitchen event page at chaliceevents.org and have a look at both our food reflection videos and our special guest speakers of the rebroadcast of any live events you may have missed. And if you've enjoyed this event, we don't have a Patreon account, but Chalice Events would love to invite you to go to chalice.ca, check out our work, and change a life by sponsoring a child or an elder. So I hope that Love in the Kitchen and Chalice's Corpus Christi weekend has not only been fun and informative, but also a reminder of God's goodness and all the things we have to be thankful for in our lives. So once again, Amie, a big thank you to you for joining us tonight. Everyone, the website is chalice.ca. And on behalf of Chalice Events, have a blessed day. Wave goodbye, Amie. See you, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.